the idea of doing the Roundup call recap is just to walk down through what we went through in 2023. Maybe if you missed a call, so that you're able to know that we talked about this community story or this feature was talked about, so that you're able to go back to the recordings and read a little bit about it, and also to jog our minds to ask any questions that you might have. So we had very interesting community stories last year. We had 6 community stories. We got to learn about the projects, how they were implemented, some of the challenges that they had, and also the experiences they had, and also the impact that they made from these implementations. So in January, we had a community story from Niger, and it was a hospital event-based surveillance community story. And then we also had an NSSD project that was presented from Nepal. So it was implemented by local government. So it was very interesting to see how the implementation went. And then we had ITIS Uganda implementation. They just walked us through what their progress had been that far and how they had been able to implement in the different districts or parishes. And then we also had Jamini Afia from D3 that presented on how they used machine learning to personalize perinatal health. We had a couple of questions from there. It was a very interesting community story. And then in September, we had ICHIS Kenya presenting on how they implemented in different counties and some of the challenges and the impact and the numbers that they had throughout the year. And then we had hypertension control in municipalities in Nepal, which was a case study, and it was also by KU team. So we also had other updates on the CHT that were presented by various team members. And we had updates on the CHT user interface. So we had a presentation on training cards. And these presentations were done in different months, sometimes through when updates were made, just to update on what has changed and how you can be able to use these features. And then we had the FAB update that we went through. That's the floating action button. And then we had navigation updates. There were a couple of changes that were done in phases last year. So the team took us through those changes. And then we had the exit form updates and targets updates. So if you have any questions on these features or these updates, feel free to ask your questions. And then for features, we had supervisor CHW create, offline replace, we had barcode search, messages tab, link, and various other features. So we've not captured all the features that were presented here. We'll add a link here so that you're able to go and read through all the features that were presented on. And then we had some documentation that was put up last year just for someone to go through and find more information or implement and configure in their projects. We had documentation on muting, self-hosting on 4X. We had CHT Sync, CHT Pipeline. And then we also had the Academy, CHT Academy. We launched it, I think, almost a year ago. So just the impact that it has had. And we've had a couple of you registering there and taking on the courses. So we say thank you, and we hope you will continue giving us feedback. And we also had an introduction to the grantees who are part of the accelerator program. And then there were also a couple of presentations on usage of CHT. We had stock monitoring as a reusable component. And then the research team also presented on use of geospatial data for microplanning towards the end of the year. It was presented towards the end of the year. And then we also had functionality improvements. We had the test harness, we had replication depth, CHT watchdog, which was a highlight for last year, a lot of impact. People came in and said what they've been able to do, the plugins they've been able to use with CHT watchdog. We also had the SRE team presenting on unified orchestration. We also had local installation on Windows without using WSL. And we had CHT conf quick start and retry. So in case you were not able to sit through any of these presentations, feel free to go on YouTube. I know Riraj will talk about it a little later, so that you're able to see how you can configure, and also feel free to ask your questions.
Just to share over here the graph on the CHT Roundup called participation for 2023. So we have been keeping track of the participation count, and we just thought like, okay, we can maybe share with the whole community. It had been really a great year last year. So as you can see, we had more than 80 participants sometime, and then average of like around 50 or higher participation. So we're really grateful for the whole CHT community, which keeps on encouraging us to have the roundup call, look for the topics that might be like of interest to the community as a whole. So yeah, thank you everyone for 2023. And then we look for similar kind of participation and engagement for the 2024 too. Thank you. And the previous roundup calls, since Maria Chana had already presented earlier, like there were a lot of things that were covered. And just in case if you have missed any of them and then you would like to go back and then look into it, we have all the previous recordings which are available in the Medic YouTube channel. And also all the notes of the CHT roundup call, which is summarized and posted in the CHT forum. So Maria Chana will probably share the link over here for all the playlist for the previous community stories, as well as the CHT core updates in the chat, and also for like where to look for the CHT roundup call notes or the summary if you want to quickly go through the roundup notes for particular month last year.
I put together this chart that shows the distribution of features and bug fixes and technical improvements, just to give pause and kind of give the number side of what Maria Chan was talking about. There were all those features that we saw that were released, and here you can see a kind of even distribution across the year. We had 4 minor releases and 9 patch releases. The patch releases are bug fixes on top of the minor releases. And I just want to give everyone maybe some inspiration to go back and look at the documentation, look at the release notes, and I bet you there's one feature in there that you missed that's really amazing. So Maria Chana, even I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about offline replace. That came up even inside of Medic. Like, that was such a great feature. I wonder how it's going out there. I hope people are using it. I hope people know about it. So this is just to show you there's a lot of stuff out there that improves the CHT, that improves the performance, that improves the features that are available to you, that should make it easier to write an app, that should make it faster for a CHT to load their form on their phone when their phone is not getting any faster, but the CHT is increasing in features. So we try to make it better for folks. And also that almost all of these were done in response to the community. So Niraj was just talking about the number of interviews that we had. Those interviews all culminate into actionable features that we want to implement, that we hope have impact for the community here. So Nicole is going to speak more to this, but this is just a little inspiration to go check out something maybe that you missed this year, and that you will be upcoming this year as well. We're going to have more features added and more releases that are going to do the same kind of impact. So go check it out. It's out there waiting for you.
So I'm just going to walk you through some stats of our user research activities that we conducted last year. As I mentioned, 29% of you got it right. We had 105 user interviews, and these were across all our focus working groups and with different versions of our personas. So we spoke to some CHWs, the supervisors, some app developers, and from all of the interviews that we conducted, we got about 824 nuggets. These are interesting things that we heard from our users that we saw and as things that were actionable and things that we could work on. And from those nuggets, we're able to draw about 22 insights and 15 emerging themes. These emerging themes are basically some recurring things that we heard. As Mr. Jones mentioned earlier, some of the fixes that were happening were all from these insights and the themes that we heard, and even things that we'll be working on across the year will also be from the user interviews that we heard, from the user interviews that we conducted over the year. In addition to the user interviews, we also conducted a customer effort score survey last year. And this was just a survey where we wanted to hear what was easy or difficult for our CHWs to do in the app. And with that, we had 255 user responses from across all of our partners. And all of this work wouldn't have been possible without your collaboration. So thank you so much for collaborating with us all across the year last year, and we're looking forward to even doing more with you this year.
Just to add on that, those previous details on the user interviews we have on the recordings as well. And I think these are also posted on the CHT forum, right, Jite? If people would like to look into or ask any questions regarding any of these.
Yes.
Okay.
So wanted to share a couple things that we've done since the last Roundup call. First one relates to minimum software requirements. So as many of you know, there are minimum requirements for software and devices to run the CHT, and these are all published on the doc site. One of these dependencies is for your Chrome browser version. If the version you're using does not align with the minimum requirements, we can't really guarantee the app will behave as expected. And in 4.0, we introduced a warning on the login screen that lets you know if your browser version is not supported. But in most projects, health workers are not really commonly logging out and logging back in on their devices, so they don't see this very often. In 4.6, we've now added an in-app pop-up to show basically the same message. Right now, it'll warn, right now the pop-up will warn you if the versions are between, if your Chrome version is between 75 and 90. This warning will show whenever the app is reloaded, and it encourages health workers to contact someone to help them update their browser. Like everything else in the app, this text is configurable and I can't even say the word, localizable. You can translate it and put it in any language. So there, I just shared a link of what the current dependencies are. It basically just takes you right to the doc site so you can see what they are and make sure that your projects so your devices have the right versions of those. That information is also available in telemetry if you want to have a look at it. So yeah, that's one of the features we just worked on. We also added a new feature that you can use in your contact and app forms. This feature allows you to add drop downs of contacts that are filtered based on basically on their parent. So an example of how you might use this is with primary contacts for a household. If you edit a household, previously the drop-down would list basically every contact that the health worker had access to on the device. And now you can filter that to include only contacts that are within the selected household. So you can, I'm going to just copy in the documentation for that so you can have a look at that. You'll notice this is probably going to go pretty fast, but there's contact here named Ernest Block. So we're looking at this place, and so there's each one of these places has 3 contacts in it. So if we just go to fill out a new form, we'll notice that this top drop down only has 3 contacts in it. So this is using the new feature that basically filters how many which contacts that we're showing in the forms. And this is the way that the drop downs worked in prior to including this feature, where it basically shows you all the contacts for that this health worker has access. So this really should make the user experience for the health workers much better. So they'll have fewer options that are irrelevant to them in those drop downs. And this is something that's been requested a number of times. And yeah, we're excited that this feature is available and you will be able to start using this. So that's it from Care Teams.
I had a question on the notification about browser compatibility. So I noticed some things may not work on, say, Safari. Safari is partially stubborn, but maybe not the entire app. So does the feature like stop the app entirely, or only when it encounters a feature that is not working on that browser?
Yeah, so right now this just blocks it, or it doesn't block it, just warns for those versions. It does not block anyone. But that is we also have a feature an issue for that we'll work on. But yeah, it currently does not totally block people.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I also just want to mention that Safari is not one of our supported browsers, so that we're not going to try to get it to work on Safari. Our main focus is on getting the mobile handset support, which is going to be Android and Chrome-based. So while Safari may work on a desktop and you're welcome to test with it, that's at your own risk.
And just for tracking purposes, there's the issue for blocking access for users in a very early Chrome version.
I'm just going to take a few minutes here to slow us down a little bit. We hear a lot at these CHT Roundup calls about the latest cool new features and awesome stories about what people are doing with the CHT. And what I want to talk about right now, though, is some of the kind of behind the scenes heavy lifting work that makes all of the rest of this possible, and some of the stuff that's happening within Medic, and then some of the stuff that we're really encouraging partners to be kind of doing in their own deployments as well. And this is on the subject of automated testing. We're going to be talking about some recent updates we made to the CHT-Conf test harness. And the reality is there's actually not going to be a whole lot of changes that consumers, that people that are using the test harness for their tests are going to notice from the work that we've done. It's been this kind of massive behind the scenes uplift to keep the test harness in sync with the rest of the CHT core code base. So all of those features and bug fixes and everything else that Ashley was showing before on that slide, we want to make sure that when we're testing the configuration, that we're testing, with that kind of stuff accounted for in the harness as well. So instead of spending too much time talking about the kind of really technical stuff that we changed in the harness, though, what I want to do is use this as kind of an opportunity to remind people of what the test harness is, how it's valuable, and then maybe if people aren't super familiar with the test harness at all, just give a quick introduction of what we're talking about here. To start us off, though, why should we care about the harness? Writing automated tests for anything takes time, it takes engineering effort. This is the kind of thing that the users aren't going to notice the tests. Your engineers could be doing other things at the time, fixing bugs, implementing new features. Is it really any value here to having these kind of automated tests? And to just kind of tip my hand right at the beginning, my main takeaway that I want people to have from this brief presentation is that yes, actually, automated tests are really important for ensuring the consistency, the stability, and the functionality of your configuration, both as it is right now when you write the test, and then also as things change, as things evolve in the future, being able to rerun those tests helps to ensure that there's a continuity there of how things are working within your own deployment. So just kind of as an example, on the CHT core framework side of things, we've got thousands of automated tests that we run all the time, and especially are paying close attention to as we go towards a release. We do a bunch of manual testing for each release, but really the automated tests are kind of the backbone of how we ensure that we're releasing high quality code that is as bug free as is humanly possible to do. And we take this really seriously because we know that when our software is not working, it's making it harder for users to do their jobs. This is the kind of thing really that does keep me up at night as an engineer. Something's broken, somebody can't do what they need to do, and it's because we didn't test that. But the truth is, a huge amount of the logic that really directly affects users' workflows lives not really in the core framework side of things, but actually in that config that's specific to each deployment. And I really believe that logic deserves a similar level of validation with the rest of the framework. So when a CHW sees an error on their device out in the field, it really doesn't make a difference to them whether that error came from a problem with the framework or if that error came with a problem with the configuration. Like either way, it's making it harder for them to provide care. So all of that is to say, really, there's a huge amount of value into having a solid suite of automated tests around your configuration that you are deploying live into the field. The tricky proposition there, though, comes in, okay, we've got this logic. It's building on top of the CHT core framework, but it's really tricky to test because it kind of only works in the context of the CHT. And that, of course, is where the CHT conf test harness comes in. Just to give a brief overview, I'm not going to get into super technical details here, but just to give a brief overview of what the test harness is, essentially it works by taking a subset of the actual CHT code, packages it up into a way that's really easy to write automated tests against. So what you're going to end up with is the harness having a very, very close approximation to the behavior of a real CHT server. And so during a test with the harness, your configuration is going to end up being consumed and interpreted just as if it was running on a CHT server. But the harness is going to allow you to see the output from your configuration in all kinds of different situations and really easily be able to validate that that output is exactly what you expect. And like I said, I'm not going to get into the super amount of details. There's the link in the chat for the harness documentation. You can go out there, you can read more about it. But just to kind of reiterate, the idea with the harness is to be able to test pretty much all of the different parts of your configuration out there. So your form workflows, you can test those with the harness. Task generation and resolution, you can test that with the harness. Targets, contact summaries, all of that kind of really detailed logic that gets built into your deployments, that custom logic, is the kind of thing that you can have automated tests using that harness to cover. And all of that's great. But like I said at the top, it takes time, it takes effort. This is code that has to be written, this is code that has to be maintained. The big question is it worth doing all of that work? And to answer that question, I really just want to compare and contrast really briefly the differences between manual testing and testing, automated testing with the test harness. Because everybody has a test server, or many test servers maybe, that before you're pushing a change into production, it goes to the test server, you're validating it manually on the test server. Why do we need to do this other automated testing? And really, to be clear right up front here, the automated tests, any automated tests, the automated tests with the test harness, they're not meant to replace all manual testing. Certainly at Medic, for our releases, we have not replaced all manual testing. But what they can do is reasonably reduce the amount of just manual regression testing, kind of the same click, click, click regression testing that you're going to do every time you push changes to your configuration. But it shouldn't eliminate all forms of manual testing. Automated tests are just going to be one part of really having a robust quality assistance approach there. But what the automated tests can do that are really difficult to do in terms of manual testing is, number one, testing a lot of scenarios really quickly. The automated tests, you can test 50 different, paths through the same form logic in a minute instead of in an hour, maybe, right? You can test edge cases, you can test all kinds of different scenarios very easily and very quickly, and then very repeatable, where I have this test, it runs now, I make this change to the form configuration, I can run the test again, see if it still works. Another thing that the test harness makes it a lot easier to do is testing complex scenarios. So the behavior within a CHT, as everybody here knows, can get really complex when you start, having certain things triggered when this form is submitted, but not if this form is submitted. This task is supposed to generate in this window of time, and it's supposed to, drop off in this window of time. That kind of stuff is really annoying as to do a manual test on, right? Think about, just even a simple thing like validate that 30 days after the task is created, if it doesn't get resolved, it's automatically dropped off the list. To manually test that, you kind of got to go out and fiddle with your device date and time, or else you're waiting 30 days to see if it works. With the test harness, all of that is kind of built in terms of being able to time travel and slide that functionality around. So you really get a lot of good benefits from being able to have simple, easy tests of very complex scenarios. And at the end of the day, what this does is it frees up your manual testing time so that your manual testing can be more of an exploratory exercise for people who are familiar with the app and really kind of want to push the limits and see what are the kinds of things that maybe we did miss in our design, or what are the kinds of things we missed in our testing, where you've already got automated tests for your expected workflows, and you already know that your workflow still works because your automated test has checked that for you. So you're able to kind of focus more on higher level valuable manual testing at that point. To bring us to a close here, I just want to end with a few practical tips, and these might be relevant for people who are just thinking about starting to write some automated tests, and also for people who've written some but are kind of looking for, what's the recommendation. And just as a full disclosure, I stole all of these from a presentation that one of our expert app developers recently gave internal to Medic, Jonathan. Shared some great tips here that I'm just going to kind of repeat for you as a takeaway from this. And one of them is, when you're thinking about asserting things in your automated tests, focus on asserting, positive things that happened. Don't try to assert things that didn't happen, because there's a whole infinite number of things that didn't happen, and keep those tests tightly focused on just what happened. Is it what I expected? Another thing is, when you're writing your tests for your configuration, make sure that the test is focused on testing the logic that's in your configuration and not focused on testing the core framework logic itself. So assume that the core framework is going to work correctly, but focus your tests on the logic that you have in your configuration. And as a side note, if you want to test the core framework, hit me up, because we can always use more tests in the core framework repo, but they don't belong as a part of your test suite for your configuration. Put an extra focus on testing edge cases for your tasks. This one seems to be one that trips a lot of people up. Tasks get really complicated. There's timing involved. There's dates involved. It can be a huge mess. So task edge cases are a really good place to just spend a little extra time when you're testing. And then lastly, one of the things that the app services team does a whole lot within Medic when they're developing configuration and writing tests is leveraging continuous integration tooling on the repository that stores the configuration to kind of rerun those tests. So you're storing your configuration code in a repository, like a Git repository somewhere. Maybe it's on GitHub, and you can set up a action that will run, that gets triggered whenever anybody pushes code to that repository. It's going to automatically run the tests against that new code, validate that all those existing tests still pass. And that's just a really easy way to ensure that your behavior, your new changes that are getting pushed in, aren't breaking things in ways that you don't expect. All of that being said, please feel free to reach out. The forum is a great place to reach out if you've got questions on, how to write test harness tests, best practices, other things. hit me up out there, hit Jonathan up out there. We can get your questions answered.
So I saw there was some note on like supporting CHT 4.6. So is test harness supporting every version of the CHT? Or is it only for
Great
certain?
question. Great question, Raj, and thank you for circling us back there. So as I mentioned before, the way the test harness works is it's using actual code from the CHT code base. And so that's why you have the ability to target certain versions of the CHT. Now, because of refactoring that happened around the 4.0 version of the CHT, it made it basically impossible to reintegrate some of that code. I won't bore everybody with the gory details, but basically it made it really hard for the test harness to do what it needed to do. The massive uplift that we've been spending a ton of time on is to fix that. And so the new upcoming version of the CHT-conf test harness is going to be using code from the upcoming 4.6 version of the CHT. And the goal going forwards is to continue to have a more unified kind of cadence there, so that anytime there's important features in the CHT code base that get released, we'll be able to pull those in to a new version of the CHT-conf test harness and get those released as well. And of course, the big one in 4.6 that has kind of motivated a lot of this work is the new version of Enkidu, which is what's getting used to render your ODK forms. That's coming in 4.6. And so having this new version of the test harness, you'll be able to kind of validate your form behavior against the new version of Enkidu, even before trying to deploy it on a test server somewhere.
So we have come towards the end of our CHT Roundup call. Thank you everyone for joining the CHT Roundup call. We look forward for your participation and engagement in the future Roundup calls. Thank you everyone.